She's pregnant. Divorce me.
My world goes dark at my husband's outrageous words. He hands me divorce papers and a meager settlement, then coldly kicks me out. I have nowhere to go, barely holding back tears. But then, right after, a life-changing phone call comes in. My name is Evelyn. I'm 30 years old. I've been married to Samuel for 2 years. By all accounts, I should be living the newlywed dream. But my current reality is far from happy. It all started when Samuel brought up the idea of living with his parents before we got married.
Hey, Evelyn, how about we live with my parents?
We've never talked about that before.
Look, I travel a lot for work. I worry about leaving you alone.
Samuel, you're overreacting. I'm an adult, you know.
I don't want anything to happen to you. My mom's at home, and since you're working too, she could help out around the house. It could be easier for you.
Well, maybe, but... Despite my reservations, Samuel kept repeating that he was worried about Evelyn. Foolishly, I took his words to heart, thinking he really cared for me. As a result, I reluctantly agreed to move in with his parents. The day after we officially tied to the knot, all the moving was done, and once things settled down, I took a moment to give my mother-in-law a proper greeting. Mother-in-law, thank you for having me from today. I look forward to being part of the family. Mother-in-law glares at me and sighs,
Yeah.
Would you like some coffee?
No need. Instead, why don't you go unpack? It's annoying to have all those boxes lying around.
Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. I'll get right on it.
Ugh, do I have to tell you to do everything? What kind of upbringing did you have?
From day one of moving in, I received harsh words from my mother-in-law. Not wanting to upset her, I quickly began to unpack. Anxiety swirled in my head. She seemed really mad. We're going to be living together, so I really want to get along if possible. But despite how I feel, my mother-in-law's snide remarks just keep escalating. Before heading to work, I prepare breakfast and set the table. Since my husband and father-in-law leave the house early, I inevitably end up eating with mother-in-law. She takes a bite of the pancake and shouts,
"What is this? Evelyn, what on earth is wrong with these pancakes?"
Didn't they suit your taste?
Suit my taste? They're horrendous. You expect me to eat this?
I did taste test multiple times, and it seemed fine to me.
That just means your taste is off. Remake them, now.
Her unreasonable demands often made me nearly late for work. Living with her was pushing me to my limits. One day, as I was checking my phone between chores, mother-in-law began berating me in front of my husband.
"Evelyn, what are you doing?"
Mother-in-law, I just finished hanging laundry, so I was taking a break.
A break, you say? Who do you think you are?
I'm sorry, but I finished all the household chores.
Don't talk back. Wives don't have the luxury of breaks. Find something to do and keep working. Got it?
But...
No buts. If you get it, go clean the staircase, you failure of a wife.
Failure of a wife? I was just taking a short break. Why does she have to go this far? That was the moment it clicked with me, and I decided to talk to my husband that night. Samuel, you saw mother-in-law scolding me today, right?
Huh? Was something going on?
You were in the living room. She called me a failure of a wife just because I took a little break. My husband sighed deeply and opened his mouth.
Look, if my mom said that, you must have really messed up. It means you're falling short, Evelyn.
What are you saying, Samuel?
I'm also disappointed in you.
What?
I thought you'd be a better wife, but as my mom said, you lack awareness. Be more responsible.
What? Lack awareness as a wife? What does that even mean? I'm doing all the housework, even though the premise of moving in was that mother-in-law would help out. I also have a job. Why do I have to endure this much? From that day on, my husband turned a blind eye. No matter how much mother-in-law bad-mouthed me or even threw things at me, he ignored it. He was already often away on business trips and started spending even less time at home. Thoughts of divorce popped into my head daily, but I had a reason to hang on. It was because of my father-in-law. He was the only one who stood by me. Mother-in-law usually didn't harass me in front of father-in-law, but sometimes our paths did cross.
Evelyn, is the front entrance clean yet?
Yes, right away.
After that, you have to weed the garden. I told you just yesterday.
I'm sorry. It started raining yesterday.
You're just slow. That's the issue. Useless. You neglect housework because you're always working.
I'm sorry. Just as I apologized, my father-in-law's voice rang out.
What's going on here? You. What have you been saying to Evelyn? Well, she's slow, so, you're having her do all this for you, and then you talk to her like that?
But she really is slow. The garden is still full of weeds, and even the food doesn't taste good, and there's not enough of it.
Weren't you the one who never touched the garden before we all moved in? And don't you always bring home ready-made meals? If you're going to complain, at least be able to do it yourself.
Fine. Whatever. Whenever my father-in-law confronts her with these truths, my mother-in-law retreats to her room. Each time he apologizes to me sincerely.
Evelyn, I'm really sorry about my wife's behavior.
No, it's okay. Thank you, father-in-law.
If anything else happens, let me know. Don't hesitate.
Yes, thank you. My father-in-law, who has a strong sense of justice, always stands up for me and scolds mother-in-law. Whenever he's not around, the harassment from her continues. But I've been able to manage, thanks to him. I lost my parents at a young age, so I have no one to turn to, even if I get divorced now. For someone like me, the presence of my father-in-law has been monumental. Then, one day, while at work, I got a call from my mother-in-law. This is odd. Why is she calling me at work? Picking up the phone, I was shocked to hear the news.
Your father-in-law has collapsed. Come to the hospital immediately.
What? Father-in-law? How?
The details don't matter. Your husband Samuel is on a business trip, so you have to come.
Yes, understood. I'm on my way. Since my husband had left on a week-long business trip 2 days ago, I had no choice but to go. I explained the situation to my boss and rushed to the hospital. As soon as I arrived, we heard the doctor's explanation. The situation is unclear. He might not regain consciousness. He was fine this morning. We've done what we can. It's up to him now. What? A tense silence followed. Breaking that silence was my mother-in-law.
Doctor, are you saying my husband is at risk? That it's just a matter of time before he passes?
Whoa, hold on, mother-in-law. What are you talking about?
Well, there's a lot to consider, like funeral arrangements and inheritance. We need to plan ahead, don't we?
But why bring it up now? Father-in-law is fighting for his life.
The doctor's already said there's not much hope.
I wonder how much inheritance he's leaving. Mother-in-law! Even after we got home, all my mother-in-law talked about was the inheritance. She'd look at me with this smug grin and say,
"You won't be getting a dime."
Despite visiting the hospital daily, father-in-law's condition showed no signs of improving. My mother-in-law wouldn't even visit him, and my husband was MIA. All I could do was pray for father-in-law to wake up. A few days later, while getting ready to visit father-in-law in the morning, my husband, who had been on a business trip, finally returned home. Samuel, why didn't you reply to my emails? I stopped mid-sentence because there was a strange woman standing behind him. I had a bad feeling and hesitantly asked, Samuel, who's this woman?
I'm sorry, Evelyn. I fell in love with her. I can't be with you anymore.
What? I felt as if I'd been hit over the head. Unapologetically, my husband continued.
She's pregnant. I want a divorce.
What are you saying? Weren't you on a business trip?
I was on a trip with her. That's when we found out she's pregnant.
You've got to be kidding. Not only was my husband's business trip a complete lie, but he had also gotten another woman pregnant. I felt faint. My vision started to blur. Just then, my mother-in-law rushed over, her eyes shining.
Wait, are you really pregnant? What's the baby's gender?
We're not sure yet, but it might be a boy.
Oh my goodness, a male heir! I'm so happy.
Seeing my mother-in-law's excitement, the other woman also chimed in. Thank you, Mom.
Oh, calling me Mom. How cute.
It was clear why mother-in-law was so ecstatic. She had never approved of me prioritizing my career over having kids. That's why she was welcoming this woman who was carrying what could be her grandchild, even if it was the result of an affair. The two of them continued to celebrate, ignoring my very existence. Then my husband handed me divorce papers. Here, fill this out now. What? I'll give you $1,000 as a settlement for now. After my dad passes, I'll pay you properly from his estate during the divorce proceedings. Now, please leave. You're a burden, and I have no use for a failure of a wife like you. I was more or less forced to sign the divorce papers. Then I was handed a measly $1,000 and kicked out of the house. A surge of fury overwhelmed me in that instant. I've had enough. I don't care anymore. If this means I'm free from my husband and mother-in-law, then that's what I truly want. But where would I go now? My parents are gone, and I can't impose on a friend's hospitality for too long. Just as I was standing there stunned, my mobile phone rang. The caller ID showed the number of the hospital where my father-in-law was admitted. Did something happen to father-in-law? I quickly answered the call. Hello? What? Father-in-law? It was joyous news that father-in-law had regained consciousness. I rushed to the hospital. Upon entering his room, father-in-law looked at me and gave me a warm smile. Hey, Evelyn, you got here fast. Father-in-law! Yeah, sorry to have worried you. I'm just so relieved. What would I have done if you hadn't woken up? I appreciate you caring so much. How's everything at home while I was here? Well, thing is, I told father-in-law about everything that had happened back at the house, including the fact that I had just been divorced. I poured out my deepest gratitude to him. Thank you for always treating me like your own daughter. You've given me so much to be thankful for. Father-in-law quietly laid his hand on my teary shoulder. Evelyn, this might not be appropriate to ask, but would you consider making me your real father? What? I heard from the hospital staff that you were the only one who came to visit, so when I woke up, I asked them to call only you. Is that so? Seeing their true colors this time made me realize that blood doesn't matter. From now on, I intend to focus only on you. Father-in-law. And so I decided to become father-in-law's adoptive child. After that, I started the discharge procedures for father-in-law. Once he was discharged, we both went to ring the doorbell at my in-law's house. When my mother-in-law opened the door, she was shocked to see both father-in-law and me. Father? And why are you here too? At the sound of mother-in-law's voice, my ex-husband appeared from the back of the house. His reaction was even more shocked than my mother-in-law's. Evelyn, what are you doing here with Dad? Hey, Samuel. You said you'd pay me alimony from your dad's inheritance once he passed, right? Well... So your dad is clearly in good health. How are you planning to pay that alimony? Look, I can't right now. Once my dad eventually passes and I get the inheritance, I will pay you, okay? Can we drop it? As he pleaded, breaking into a sweat, I dropped the bomb. Sorry to break it to you, but you're not inheriting anything. What? My ex-husband's face turned pale, his mouth twitching. That's when my father-in-law delivered the final blow. From now on, Evelyn is my only family. I'm giving all my property to her while I'm still alive. This house will be in Evelyn's name, so the two of you need to leave. Now. You can't be serious, Dad. Do you think I'd joke about this? I'm utterly done with you. All you care about is my inheritance. Get out, now. You're both worthless. Father-in-law then forces my ex-husband and his affair partner out of the house and promptly shoves divorce papers in front of mother-in-law. Just like my ex-husband tried to do to me, he somewhat aggressively pushes for her signature. Sign your name here. No way! He was resolute. You forced Evelyn to sign divorce papers, didn't you? Now sign! She let out a tiny shriek, then reluctantly signed the papers. They apparently moved into a one-room apartment with his affair partner. With all their belongings shipped to them COD, their new place must be a mess. As for me, thanks to my father-in-law, I was able to claim alimony in the divorce. We also completed the adoption paperwork, and now we're enjoying peaceful days as if we're a real father and daughter. Dad, it's nice out. How about we grab a basket and head to the park?
A splendid idea, Evelyn. Speaking of which,
The sandwich filling is tuna salad and roast beef, right? You never eat anything else.
you got me. Even after decades, she never remembered.
Don't look so glum. I'll always be here to support you, Dad. Now my life is the epitome of happiness. I never imagined such days would await me back then. There's only one thing on my mind now. I want my beloved father to stay healthy and live a long life. That's my one and only wish.